In an unexpected and deeply emotional moment, Hollywood legend Denzel Washington was seen breaking down in tears during a live TV appearance after receiving a surprise call from Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traoré. What was said on that call left both the audience and viewers around the world stunned. This unforgettable exchange proved that true leadership and respect can transcend borders, cultures, and even fame. It was supposed to be a regular late-night talk show. The audience cheered as Denzel Washington stepped onto the stage, smiling, calm, legendary. The host greeted him with energy, cracking jokes, playing clips from his latest role. But behind Denzel's warm laughter, there was a strange silence in his eyes, like his heart was somewhere else. Halfway through the show, the host said with a grin, "We've got a little surprise for you tonight." Denzel, a live call from someone very far away. Denzel blinked. What kind of surprise? The screen behind him lit up. A flag appeared. Burkina Faso. Confused murmurs filled the room. Then came a voice, strong, respectful, gentle. "Good evening, Mr. Washington. This is Ibrahim Traoré, President of the Transition of Burkina Faso." Denzel froze. The room went silent. For the first time in the show's history, you could hear nothing except one man's breath caught in his throat. No one, absolutely no one, expected what came next. The audience stared. Denzel's hands trembled as the president continued speaking, his French, tinged English calm but heartfelt. "You don't know me, Mr. Washington, but when I was 14 years old I was just a barefoot boy in Burkina Faso. I saw you in glory. I saw a black man not begging, not afraid, but strong and crying for justice." Denzel blinked rapidly. "That night I told my mother, one day I'll fight for people too, like him." The host looked stunned. Denzel covered his mouth. Ibrahim continued, "Years later, when the people of my country needed someone to stand, I remembered your strength, your words, your eyes. I stood not because I was fearless, but because I had seen what courage looked like in you." The room was silent. Denzel slowly lowered his hand, eyes red with tears. "You're telling me I helped shape a president?" "No, sir," Ibrahim replied. "You helped shape a man who refused to kneel to injustice." A single tear ran down Denzel's face. "Thank you, my brother." The crowd gasped softly, but what the president said next was even more shocking. Denzel leaned closer to the screen. The host sat still, eyes wide. Then Ibrahim spoke again. "Today I speak not just as a president, but as a man who owes a debt. And in Burkina Faso, when someone saves your soul, we do not forget." Denzel shook his head humbly. "No, please, I didn't, Mr. Washington," Traoré said. "I am officially inviting you to be honored in Ouagadougou. But more than that, I want to name a leadership school after you, a place where our children will learn to stand tall, just as I learned from watching you." The crowd gasped again. The host whispered, "Whoa." Denzel's voice cracked. "Mr. President, I don't deserve that." Traoré smiled gently. "That's why you do." The screen went black as the call ended. And there, on national TV in front of millions, Denzel Washington buried his face in his hands and sobbed, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming truth that sometimes a single life can echo across oceans and generations. But this was only the beginning. In less than 24 hours, Denzel would be packing his bags. Burkina Faso was calling. And what was waiting there would shake the world. Denzel didn't sleep that night. He kept replaying Ibrahim Traoré's words. His eyes stayed red long after the cameras stopped rolling. By morning, social media had exploded. Denzel and Traoré were trending in over 20 countries. Fans, journalists, and leaders were praising the emotional moment. Some even called it the most powerful TV moment in decades. But while the world was reacting, Denzel was quietly packing his bags. Not for a movie, but for something that felt divine. He booked the next available flight to Burkina Faso. No entourage, no spotlight, just him, a small backpack, and a heart full of emotions he couldn't describe. As the plane took off, he looked out the window and whispered, "I don't know what I'm walking into, but I know I have to go." Back in Ouagadougou, President Traoré stood by a window in the palace, staring at the runway in the distance. His aides asked, "Should we prepare the press?" Traoré shook his head. "No cameras, no speeches. Just truth." Something powerful was about to unfold. Neither man knew that in just 48 hours they would both cry again, this time together. When Denzel's flight landed, there were no flashing cameras, no red carpets, just quiet. A black SUV waited on the tarmac. A single man stood beside it, dressed simply. No military medals, it was him. President Ibrahim Traoré. Denzel stepped out slowly. Their eyes met, and for a moment no words were needed. They embraced, not as a celebrity and a leader, but as two men whose lives had unexpectedly crossed across continents. "I'm honored you came," Ibrahim said. Denzel smiled faintly. "I didn't come as a star. I came as a brother." The SUV drove them through dusty roads, past neighborhoods, markets, children running barefoot, waving as the car passed. No one knew who was inside. They arrived at a modest house made of sun-worn clay and tin. "This was my home," Traoré said. Traoré spoke softly. He opened the door. Inside there were no guards, no luxury, just old photos, a woven mat, and silence. Then Traoré handed Denzel a wrinkled picture. In it, a young boy clung to the hand of an older woman. "She raised me," he said. "When my parents worked day and night, she fed me, bathed me, told me stories of strength." Then, quietly, he added, "And she's still alive." They drove another hour along winding village roads. No one said much. Denzel stared at the photo, her wide smile, gentle eyes, and a strength only time could give. "Where is she now?" Denzel asked. Traoré's jaw tightened. "She still works, cleaning classrooms in a rural school." Denzel turned slowly. 885. The president nodded. "She never asked for help," she said. "God gave me legs. I'll use them until he takes them." When they arrived, the school looked worn but full of life. Children ran barefoot, drawing in the dust with sticks. Then she came into view, bent but proud, holding a broom. The same woman from the photo. Denzel stepped out of the car, frozen. Traoré walked toward her. She looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "Ibrahim," she whispered. He rushed into her arms. "Mahawa." Then Denzel walked forward. She looked at him and gasped. Her hands trembled. You're him," she said, touching his face. In one quiet courtyard in Burkina Faso, time stood still. 3 souls, 3 stories, one moment that would melt hearts across the world. But what came next would shake the entire nation. Maman Hawa sat between Denzel and President Traoré under the shade of an old baobab tree. Her hands were rough, her back slightly bent, but her voice warm. She told stories of young Ibrahim, how he cried in her arms when nights were cold, how he once gave her his only piece of mango so she wouldn't go hungry. Denzel listened, eyes soft. Then she reached into the pocket of her old apron. "I kept this all these years," she said. She pulled out a folded yellowed paper, child's handwriting. It read, "One day I will be a leader, and I will find you, Mama. I promise." Traoré gasped. He remembered writing it, age 9, her birthday, after she gave him her only piece of bread. Denzel wiped a tear. She held on to hope. That's the most powerful kind of faith. Suddenly, a young student ran toward them, barefoot and laughing, holding a cracked plastic ball. "Mama, will you play?" And she did, still barefoot, still smiling. But something inside Denzel shifted. He was no longer just visiting. He had found something sacred. That evening, Denzel and Traoré returned to the palace. The mood had changed. Neither spoke much. Thoughtful silence filled the car. Then Traoré stood. "I want to show you something I've never shown anyone outside my family." He led Denzel down a private corridor, stone walls, quiet footsteps, no guards. At the end stood a thick wooden door. He unlocked it. Inside was a small room, dimly lit, filled with old books, journals, maps, and one large framed photo. Mom and Hawa and a boy, young Ibrahim, both laughing. "This is my real treasure room," Traoré said. Denzel was speechless. Traoré picked up an old notebook. Inside were handwritten notes. His first dreams for Burkina Faso. All of this started with her. "I'm here because she believed I was worth something, even when I had nothing." Denzel touched the page gently. "You lead like a son who remembers love." Traoré nodded. "And I want the world to know. Leadership isn't about power. It's about gratitude." The room fell silent. 2 great men. One mission, to honor the woman who shaped a president. And Denzel had an idea. One that would surprise everyone, especially Mama Hawa. At dawn, Denzel sat outside on the palace terrace, watching the sun rise over Ouagadougou. Her face, her laugh, her strength, they echoed in his heart. Then Ibrahim joined him. "I had a thought," Denzel said, sipping tea. "Let's give her the honor she never asked for." Traoré smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." That afternoon, quietly and without alerting the press, they returned to the village school with a small team. Children gathered. Teachers stood in silence. Mama looked confused. "What's happening?" Then Traoré knelt before her, holding a small velvet box. Inside was a golden medallion engraved with her name and the national seal. "For your service to this nation, as a mother, teacher, and guardian of hope," he said, voice shaking. The children clapped. Denzel stepped forward, eyes full of tears. "And from the world of cinema," he said, pulling out an envelope, "I spoke with my producer this morning. Your story will become a movie. And every cent will go to building schools in your name." Mama Hawa dropped to her knees, sobbing. She had spent her life giving, and now she was receiving. But the biggest surprise was still coming. 3 days later, Denzel Washington returned to Los Angeles for a live interview on one of America's biggest talk shows. It was meant to be light, red carpets, upcoming films, laughter. But behind his smile, something had shifted. As the cameras rolled and the host asked about his trip to Africa, Denzel paused. Then he said, "Can I take a call?" The host, surprised, chuckled. "Live." Denzel nodded. The crew scrambled. Within moments, the screen behind him flickered to life. And there he was, President Ibrahim Traoré, live from Burkina Faso. The studio fell silent. "Mr. Washington," Traoré said, his voice warm, "your visit reminded us that kindness knows no borders." Then he paused. "And today you honored my people. Now, I want to honor someone you inspired." He turned to his side. Mama Hawa appeared on screen holding a phone. Her eyes sparkled. The audience gasped. Denzel's lips quivered. His hand trembled. Traoré continued, "You reminded the world that even the loudest voices must sometimes stop to listen." Then, softly in broken English, Mama Hawa whispered, "Thank you, my son." Denzel bowed his head and wept, live on international television. So did millions around the world. The clip spread like wildfire. It wasn't about films anymore. It was about something far deeper. Twitter lit up. Mama Hawaii, President of Hearts. Denzel breaks silence. From Paris to Johannesburg, from Tokyo to Atlanta, people began posting stories of the women who raised them, who shaped them. An old photo of Tro hugging Mama Hawa in her kitchen went viral, a symbol of grace, love, and gratitude. International outlets paused their politics to air the moment. Denzel breaking down, Traoré speaking gently, Mama Hawa saying, "Thank you." CNN called it the most human moment ever captured on live TV. But something else happened, something unexpected. Donations poured in. A quiet GoFundMe page, created by a student from the village school, had hoped to raise $10, and in 2 hours it crossed $1 million. People didn't just watch. They felt, and they acted. In a divided world, this story, a soldier's promise, a mother's love, and an actor's tears, was pulling strangers together. But while the world watched, Mama Hawa was fading, and she had one final request. By the 6th day of this unforgettable week, her body grew weary. She had smiled for days, hugged dozens, spoken with presidents and stars, but her body was whispering its time. She asked to speak with Denzel and Ibrahim alone. They came to her small room in the village, no cameras, no microphones, just 3 souls. "I'm old," she said gently. "I won't see the next planting season." They shook their heads, pleaded with her to rest, to stay. But she only smiled. "I have no fear. My only wish, let no child in Burkina Faso ever go to school hungry." A tear traced down Traoré's cheek. She reached for Denzel's hand. "You tell stories that matter," she said. "The world listens to you. Tell this one." Then, from under her pillow, she took out a small, tattered scarf, faded, stitched with love. "Ibrahim used to tie this around my arm when he played president," she said. She placed it in his hands. "My first medal." Her final words, "Take care of each other." They held her as she closed her eyes. The sun was rising, so was her legacy. President Traoré stood in silence beside her bed, still clutching the scarf. The room smelled of shea butter and old books. Denzel knelt at her feet, head bowed, shoulders trembling. "She gave me everything when I had nothing," Traoré said quietly. "And now, I must give everything back." He held up the scarf like a royal crest. "We will build something in her name. A school, a garden, a future." Denzel looked up, eyes swollen. "Yes," he whispered. "Yes, I'll help." Outside, villagers had gathered. Somehow they knew. Traoré stepped out and raised the scarf. "Mama has gone to rest, but her spirit will feed generations." The crowd wept. In under 12 hours, the news circled the globe. Burkina Faso declared a national day of mourning for Mama Hawa. That evening at a press conference, Traoré made a promise. Every child in this nation will know her name. And Denzel, he canceled all upcoming appearances. I've played kings and generals, he told his team. But today I serve a mother. The next morning the sun rose gently over the village. A simple wooden casket sat in the center square. No velvet ropes, no golden statues, just flowers, drums, silence. President Traoré walked behind the casket alone, carrying only one thing, the scarf. Denzel followed. His suit wrinkled, his eyes red. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Messages poured in from world leaders. But none touched hearts more than a barefoot boy from Niger, who walked 2 days to deliver a note that read, "Thank you for raising our president." As the casket was lowered into the earth, children cried. Elders clutched their chests. A bird landed on the grave and stayed. Then Denzel stepped forward. From his pocket he pulled a necklace. His father's. "She reminds me of him," he whispered. "Strong, quiet, never asked for anything." He placed it on the grave. "Goodbye, Mama." Even the cameras stopped filming. Some things are too sacred for screens. That night, under a sky full of stars, Denzel and Traoré sat in silence on a straw mat beside a quiet fire. No speeches, no press. They had just buried the woman who shaped them both, one with her hands, the other with her spirit. As the fire crackled quietly beneath the stars, President Ibrahim Traoré turned to Denzel and said, "This week, I remembered who I am." Denzel didn't speak right away. He looked out across the silent fields of Burkina Faso, then nodded slowly. "Me too." No ink was spilled, no official document signed. But that night, under a sky ancient and full of stories, they made a pact, one written in the quiet language of pain, gratitude, and unshakable hope. By morning, the first plans for the Mama Hawa Foundation were underway, a joint effort between Denzel Washington, President Traoré, and a group of quietly determined educators and healers. The foundation's mission was simple but bold, to provide nourishment, education, and emotional healing for children in rural Burkina Faso, and eventually, beyond. Denzel committed his full salary from his next film, not out of guilt, but out of love. But even more powerful than the money was a new, short video he released just before boarding his flight home. Sitting in a modest chair in a white shirt, Denzel looked straight into the camera and said, "If one woman in a small village can raise a president and change the heart of a Hollywood actor, then what are we waiting for?" The world didn't scroll past it. It stopped. The video reached 100 million views in 24 hours. The internet didn't just watch, it felt. And it waited to see what would happen next. 3 days after Mama Hawa's funeral, Denzel returned to the United States quietly. No press, no red carpets. But his long-scheduled live television interview couldn't be canceled. Networks had been promoting it for weeks. Denzel agreed to appear, but under one condition. "Let me speak from my heart, no script." The studio lights were warm and familiar. The audience, cheerful, expecting the usual charm, maybe a few jokes, but the tone shifted the moment the host asked, "Denzel, you've traveled the world. What's one moment that changed your soul?" Denzel didn't answer at first. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded, weathered scarf. He held it up, eyes damp. And then, into the mic, he said quietly, "President Ibrahim Traoré called me, and I couldn't breathe. He reminded me that greatness isn't in trophies or awards. It's in the hands of mothers who wash your wounds, and presidents who remember them." The host, visibly confused, asked gently, "And what did he say?" "Exactly." Denzel took out his phone, pressed play on a voice memo. The room went still as President Traoré's recorded voice filled the studio. "Thank you for honoring a woman the world forgot, but who made a man the world remembers." Denzel broke. On live television, with millions watching, he sobbed, clutching the scarf, shoulders shaking, and the world paused to cry with him. People stopped mid-dinner, newsrooms fell silent, social media froze, not with outrage or memes, but with reverence. The clip became the most shared video of the year. Comment after comment poured in. "I've never cried this hard over someone I've never met. This made me want to call my mom right now." Oh, is Ibrahim Traoré. The world needs more leaders like him. Across Africa, stories of forgotten mothers began surfacing. In the US, youth groups organized candlelight vigils in honor of Mama Hawa. But in Burkina Faso, something even more unexpected began. Children across rural villages started writing letters. Not to Santa, not to influencers, not to celebrities. They wrote to President Traoré. One note read, "If I work hard like you, will I also make my mother proud?" Denzel remained silent after the interview. But the next morning, he posted a photo on Instagram. A single tree in Burkina Faso. The caption, "She watered roots that now hold up nations." No hashtags, no promotions, just truth. 1 week after that surprise broadcast, a statue was quietly unveiled in Ouagadougou. It wasn't a general. It wasn't a king. It wasn't a president. It was a woman. She stood in bronze, one hand holding a child's, the other tying a familiar scarf around the child's head. At the base, a small bronze plaque read, "To Mama Hawa, the mother of all leaders." President Traoré stood before it with Denzel beside him. Each held a candle. Neither man spoke, because some moments are too sacred for words. That night, as wind rustled through the city streets, villagers swore they could feel Mama Hawa's spirit brushing gently against their cheeks. Back in Hollywood, Denzel made one final gesture. In partnership with the Burkina Faso government, he launched the Hawa Fund, a scholarship dedicated to young girls from rural Africa who dream of leading. As reporters crowded to ask for a statement, he gave them only this: "Some phone calls change your schedule. This one changed my soul." And to you, the one reading this now, if this story touched you, if it made you cry, made you remember someone, made you think about what matters, then share it. Comment below with, "I believe in the power of love and leadership," because your voice matters, your story matters. Let's remind the world that greatness is not about being seen. It's about having heart. Let's make this story travel. And let's never forget, one kind act can echo across generations. Thank you for watching. Thank you for remembering Mama Hawa.